First order of business is approving the minutes from our last meeting, which is December 15th. Can we do approval, Kathy? Do we have enough people to do that?
Good question. I don't know that we have a quorum, do we?
I don't believe so. Yep. We can do it next time. This might be a good time. I know, John, you wanted to get caught up on things, so this probably be a good time. We do have Jesse Dunbar just joined us. Hi, Jesse.
It's not really Jesse. I just get out of Zoom account.
It's Elaine / Jesse. All right.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
Well, I think this would be the first item. Second item is discussion regarding Spectrum offer. Maybe we can catch you up on what Spectrum presented. We had a meeting with Spectrum, and then last time we met, Consolidated met with us, and we were expected them to come up with an offer as well, but they did not.
Right.
And they seemed somewhere down the road, right, Kathy?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if we want to work with them, their recommendation was they make their decisions by September for what it is they're going to be doing in the following year. So we would have to get ourselves in gear and make some decisions and be ready to, present something and have them decide in September of this year. So.
Do you feel, not to throw this on your shoulders, do you think you could give a quick synopsis on the Spectrum part?
Sure. And I'll for anybody who doesn't remember,
yeah.
There is a YouTube recording of the town meeting where Spectrum made their pitch. But, and I tried to capture that as clearly as I could in the minutes. And what let's see. So they believe that there are 2,160 homes or businesses that have coverage, which was 100 more than last year. There are 44 homes that are not covered by Spectrum services, meaning it's not down their street or driveway. They couldn't access it if they wanted to at this point. The cost to provide access to those remaining homes would be $324,564, or rounded up to $325,000. Spectrum would offer to pay about a third of that, or $110,000 towards that cost, which would leave, $200,000 plus for us to kick in. They recommended that there might be some funds through the ARPA funds, or that there might be some other Maine Connectivity Authority funds available for that. She talked a little bit about what their minimum residential services, which the minimum now is 300 over 10 speeds. You can get up to a gig over 35. And they're hoping in 3 to 4 years' time to be able to offer gig symmetrical service, but they're not there yet. If there was a serviceable location within 250 to 300 feet from the existing lines, they could do that without any additional equipment or cost or anything like that. Let's see. Yeah, and they actually based their estimates on services on the report that we had done by Casco Bay for the town, and that they do offer some low income program rates of $19.90 per month. So their offer is, for those 44 homes, we would have to pay about $215,000.
Anybody want to add anything to that?
And these homes are scattered around the town of Mount Desert?
I think there are a couple pockets that they were talking about, like a few roads essentially.
Okay.
And I don't know if I would categorize Consolidated as not having an offer. It seemed like they might be willing to work with us. Like they weren't refusing to work with us. She didn't really have her stuff together and said like, here's the number and this is what it would be. She was more like, here are our loose plans for the state of Maine. We've looked at Mount Desert Island in the past. We don't have any hard plans for it right now. We're working with Bar Harbor. And then kind of outlaid how it could possibly work in terms of the town kind of helping to fill the gaps with lower served or less dense areas. So if they decided to come here, we could kind of incentivize them to do a complete build out. Is that safe to say? It's like they left the door open, but they weren't really helping us along the road terribly.
Yeah, I sort of came away with the idea that they do like to partner with towns and that we would work together and they could help us figure out where the money would come from, put in grant applications, but it has to be a big enough project for them to be interested in it, which is why we would want to engage the other towns on the island.
And that I think in like September is when they do their planning for the following year,
Yes.
something along those lines. So
if Spectrum hasn't found it economically attractive to serve these 44 homes, Consolidated won't either. So they would be a player only in an overlay for something past what Spectrum has today. As far as Mount Desert is concerned, is that how I read this? I mean, they're interested in revenue, and if Spectrum is giving 95% of the customers the service that they want, Consolidated is not going to deal with us for the other 5%. It didn't sound enthusiastic.
No.
it would be for the whole town. She also said, though, anything that they think would increase the take rate would increase their interest. Having an engaged broadband committee helps. Having a surveyed town, having people just respond to their website saying that they have an interest in Fidium actually sends a strong signal to Consolidated that there's interest there. But no, I don't think, John, are you saying that Consolidated would come in and do the last 5%?
I'm saying they wouldn't do that.
No, they wouldn't. No, it would be an all. I think it's like they would come in and blanket the island, or they won't. Right.
Right.
And even when they blanket the island, they might skip some roads unless the town can cough up some money to help offset the cost of the low density roads.
So it seemed like so speaking, I'm trying to catch up to speed here, and thank you, Kathy, for giving me a little tutorial ahead of this call. But we have two different problems, it sounds like, facing us. One is how to handle the 44, and Consolidated is not the answer for how to handle the 44 by itself. And we could go down a path of how do you handle the 44, and that would be with Spectrum, and it's about $7,500, $7,400 per house. That sounds like applying for grants and getting money and that kind of stuff. Then the second problem is, how do you get past what Spectrum currently offers? Is there a better deal out there with more upside? And so that second problem sounds like Consolidated would like to play as long as they had enough coverage across the island. Tremont, Southwest, Bar Harbor, Mount Desert. I think my impression was they want more than just Mount Desert. They want to have more mass on the island. Is that a fair interpretation of what they were looking for?
Yes, I think that, yeah, we all thought there's no way that Consolidated is going to come in for a few things for the last 3 to 5% of those who are uncovered. It would be a much bigger pool, or they're not interested. And so we just know that, as you said, take rates are important to them. They want to know that there's interest, and the larger the number, the greater the interest, makes it much more attractive to them.
So did they mention what speeds they're offering with Iridium, Fidium, whatever it's?
Fidium.
Fidium.
Yeah.
I think it was gig over gig, or was it half that?
Yeah, their model, John, I don't know if Kathy told you about the Blue Hill Peninsula. project they have going. But anyway, that's something that came together very quickly, just because I think it really met I think it had all the characteristics they're looking for: rural, poorer areas, that type of thing, and and very little current access to broadband internet. So it met all. So I think they got a lot of money to do it, and they're taking fiber to every household. If it has the telephone line, I think they were saying, right, they're going to run fiber all the way to the home. That's their model. I just don't think we fit their model. Right. I think if we could fit their model if we come up with a lot of money.
Right.
For them, that's when we're going to fit their model. And they were saying they would have to. I don't know. Is it my understanding that Spectrum has a lot more fiber backbone on the island than Consolidated? Would that be fair to say? But anyway, if they do, I mean, they would have to run their own fiber everywhere. So,
but the difference is that Spectrum, you know, we were thinking of these as two things, John. One was, let's just get universal coverage, and Spectrum was the obvious way to go to fill the existing gaps. But it's not the gold standard. It's not future proof. And fiber optic is, and the best way to go for fiber optic is with Consolidated, because they also own all the telephone poles. So the make ready process and the expense of that, of going pole to pole, is much easier. Spectrum doesn't own those poles, but Consolidated does, along with the electric company. And so that was, you know, we don't have to choose one or the other. We were thinking, should we choose both? Should we bother to finish out what we need by putting in, you know, as we said, like $7,400 per residence, or should we just let it go as it is and not worry about that? But continue to pursue Consolidated for universal fiber optic services. And the best way to do that is via a partnership with Consolidated and with the whole island together.
And there might be a little bit of tea leaf reading in that at a certain point, they might come to Mount Desert anyway, right? Like they might not prioritize it, but in the next 3 or 4 years, it might not cost the town anything to just wait and let Consolidated come.
That's true.
But you don't know, it's not a guarantee.
One other thing, Spectrum has all but 44.
Right.
I can't see Consolidated seeing the value of coming in. I can't anyway.
She also mentioned that it was very hard to work with federal requirements. And so I wonder if they're a little bit reluctant to come on MDI because of the park. If they have, I don't know how much they have to kind of work around the park boundaries. But she did talk about how that was very difficult to deal with in that Blue Hill project.
And she also mentioned that the core is built to Ellsworth, and they're going to do more in the first quarter of the current year as well.
That's right.
It's that close anyway.
So I'm speaking as a person who I'm technology agnostic. I'm interested in what's the service you're going to offer, whether it's neutrinos from Mars, doesn't matter to me. Fiber sounds great, but I've heard fiber to the home for 15 years. Show me the money. Where is it? So did they talk about how big their current footprint is in Maine with fiber to the home and how it's working?
They said Maine is Consolidated's largest market, and Fidium Fiber is the new name for their fiber offering. They're offering gig speeds symmetrical for $70 a month as their most popular option. They do offer lower speeds for lower dollars. They have a 50 megabyte for $35 a month, or 250 for $65 a month. It's generally a free installation and all symmetrical speeds. And they can do a mesh within a home, so it's a whole home coverage.
So I was trying to get past the marketing sales pitch into the engineering side. How big is their foot? They want to go 400,000. They'd like to get 400,000 locations served in Maine. So the 400,000, do they have like 100,000 now, or 10,000, or 100? Did she have any sense of how big, is it Blue Hill? Is that their first big one, or?
They were they were talking to the Blue Hill Peninsula. They were also talking to places out in Franklin County and Rangeley area at the same time. And so those projects, plus some others that did not necessarily include Consolidated, all came together with some federal funding through the Connect Maine Authority application through the NTIA. And so that's how they got those. So they do have, Maine is their largest market, but I don't know how big it is right now, off the top of my head.
And maybe Brian has a better sense than I don't take my questions as being negative. I'm just, you know, I was a Consolidated customer. In fact, I was the precursor to Consolidated was Fairpoint. Before Fairpoint, it was Verizon. Verizon couldn't make money at it, so they sold to Fairpoint. They
Right.
went bankrupt. Then it was, so I'm just, you know, the financial backing of the company is in other words what I was kind of getting at. And existence proof, they're doing a lot of it, helps with get past those kinds of questions. They're doing a lot and they're in business, they'll stick around for a while. Spectrum's got a large footprint around the country. So it seems to be I mean, Spectrum's here in San Antonio, in my neighborhood. So they have a large, so that was really where I was kind of get here. So sounding like that's a, so they're a candidate for maybe in parallel with Spectrum or displacing Spectrum for the higher speeds if we think that they, you know, offer both. That competition is good, and don't put all your eggs in the Spectrum basket if Consolidated has a good offer.
I know that a few years ago, before the last town project here in Pretty Marsh, I had no internet whatsoever. And then all of a sudden they started stringing lines down my road, which I had no idea was happening. So I benefited from that last one, and I'm sitting here and it started off, it wasn't, I mean, it was nice, it was good internet, but over the years, I got to say that it's become faster and faster without me having to do anything. I think that's a natural business model, is I think if we could get Spectrum into every home, I think we're going to see a natural evolution. Like they even talked about new technology they're working on. And I can't remember exactly what it is, but it sounded like it was going, they're hoping that they're going to be able, even with the hybrid coaxial, whatever it is, to the house to provide even greater speeds. I can't, Pete, you probably know more about it than I do, but do you recall what they were talking about?
I think they can use hardware like modems essentially to push coax a little bit further. But I'm not, you know, I'm not sure if it's going to be equivalent to all the benefits of fiber. And I think there's also this kind of like shared resources thing that fiber avoids, where your speed is not degraded if other people are using it.
I mean, I got 319 right now, as I say here at my house.
Yeah. Here in the 6th largest city in the country, I've got 20 megs down. All right.
Yeah.
But see, even with 20 megs down, you're having a fine Zoom connection, you know.
Yeah, it's 3 megs up. I'm the last ranger out here, I think. I'm in development, but as I was mentioning, Kathy, before, all utilities are underground in this development, and the homeowners association doesn't want to see people digging up all the pavements just to give failover fiber or something like that. So anyway, okay. Yeah, all the technologies are constantly pushing the envelope. I think the standards for hybrid fiber coax goes up to 10 gigs. And so there's upside in the coax. So for a guy who's got 20 megs, think, wow, 300, that's great. When I go to MDI, I get better broadband than I do here in San Antonio, Texas.
So Kathy, if they were saying 325, Spectrum saying 325, and that they would pay 110, and we had ARPA of a little over 1 or 150, there's a bit of a gap. So if we did that, would the process be you go ask for some money from residents via tax increase? Is that how it typically works? Or just for
What I
budget?
was looking at after the last meeting, Peter, and I'd have to go back and check to see if the money was still available. Hancock County has opera funds, okay? And so my first question was, do they do just fiber, or would they consider a coax project? And so they came back and they said, yes, we would consider a coax project. So I think at the time, I think I needed to get around 37,000 roughly. At that time, now this was 2 months ago, at that time, they still had that money available. I would have to go back and check to see if they had all distributed it in the interim. But at the time of my last inquiry, such a project would be eligible and the money was still there. So what I'll probably do tomorrow is I'll just double back with them to see where we stand. We had, I think, 153,715 in our town opera fund, and we still have that. We haven't expended that yet. We've expended about half of what we were allotted, but we still have that, and we currently don't have any solid plans for it. So I think the board would be willing to at least entertain the project. Like I say, we'll double check with the county to see if the rest of it, if that would be the case, then we would have enough to go without going to the taxpayers.
That's interesting. So it sounds like there's a path if we wanted to explore it and validate. There's Hancock County ARPA funds, there's town ARPA funds, and then there's Spectrum's contribution to hit that number to get full coverage.
Kathy, is the number from Spectrum, is that 210,000? Make sure I'm using the right numbers when I go to the county. So I would ask, do you have this much available? I want to make sure what I'm asking is for the total amount. So I know what the town's got, and I can find out what the county has. And so all I need to know is what the actual figure from Spectrum is. Kathy sounds like she's dying.
I feel like I'm dying here. I'm having a major coughing attack.
Oh dear, I'm sorry.
My notes from our October meeting, and I just confirmed it this morning, looking at the recording of that meeting on YouTube, was they said $324,564.
324, that's the total cost of the project. And of that, they're willing to kick in 210?
They were going to put in 110.
110, okay,
So we were going to be on the hook for the other 215.
right. So then I say we've got 153.7 in ARPA. So I get my figures still pretty correct. About 37 is what we'd have to pull out of the county. So I'll double check to see if that's still there.
And I think, before we make any move, I think we need to know exactly what locations we're talking about. And are these homes that want that kind of coverage?
Yeah.
If you recall, when she was doing it, she had a few locations on there and kept talking about Peabody Drive. And we kind of got stuck on that. And I went and looked it up later, and the property is one of the Land and Garden Preserve buildings. I think it was their barn or something.
Uh-huh.
And, do they need service there or not?
Right.
So I think we need to know more specifically. And we're taking their information from the Casco Bay report. I think we need to do a lot more investigation in terms of exactly what locations are we talking about? Are these properties that actually need this? Because otherwise we're just throwing money at something that's not necessary.
That's true. If they're all in that category of being ancillary buildings to a nonprofit organization.
And some of the others were on or off of the Beach Hill Road down to Long Pond. And who knows, they might be summer camps where people do not want to have even electricity there, It's like, no, this is my getaway space. I don't need Spectrum here, so.
Yeah.
Do I recall correctly that Brian said that their agreement was about total coverage and not necessarily specific. So if we agreed to it, they would be contractually obligated, like if there was another home that they missed, that they would have to do that? Or would the contract be really more on specific roads and residences?
That's a good question. I am not sure. I don't think we have any kind of franchise agreement with them now. And that might have been where that universal coverage might kick in. So
So it sounds like we would need to do a little bit. So Derlin can just validate, and Derlin, it might be more like 50 and change than 30 and change.
Okay, that's why I was trying to get the specific number.
But so yeah, it would be like 215 minus 153. But
Yeah.
we should also validate if we should maybe check with Brian if he thinks it's a good deal to pursue, and then figure out his approach to how do we like get some more details.
Kathy, this is Lily, and I'm sorry I'm calling in because I don't have any good cell signal right now. I think that it will be very important to confirm those locations, and even when you talked about Peabody Drive and the Land and Garden Preserve, etc., are any of those areas that might not be covered right now, any areas that might potentially be used for seasonal housing or seasonal workforce, that having broadband to those locations might be important? And again, I'm bringing in a whole nother, conversation, but that may be an important part to be able to figure out over the course of time. So, thanks.
no, I agree. I think we need to know exactly what locations are really missing and who lives there, who's the homeowner, how is it used? And should we, is this something the town should be spending money on?
It's 7,500 a pop for a shed or a barn. we definitely want to be clear.
Mhm. So the question is, how do we go back and do that? It's a bit of legwork to get all that done. I
Well, we put it
can't
on-
offer to do it myself right
Well,
now.
we put it on them.
Put
We
it
said
on
we want
Spectrum.
100% coverage, residential coverage.
And then if it really is 44, we could probably look up the residents and contact them directly and validate it. That's a pretty lower bound number.
They had some locations on their presentation.
Poor Kathy. Geez. I know, I've had those coughing fits before.
Peter, it sounds like those locations are fairly spread out. You mentioned like Beach Hill and Peabody Drive, and I'm wondering if those were the only two spots or whether there were a number of. Seems to me that at one time there were some locations over in Seal Harbor that were up isolated out. I'm wondering if they're including those as well. So. Oh, by Wildwood Stables, I knew it was one area that at one time they wanted coverage, and I don't think it ever was achieved.
Sorry about that. See if I can get through this. The Casco Bay report that Brian provided to us has illustrations of where the missing addresses are.
Oh.
And that is in our shared folder.
Mhm.
So we can all take a look at that and try and figure out what exactly is missing. But so it is in a couple of different parts of town.
Okay.
But
Anything else?
should we come up with some concrete steps of how we want to proceed and who's going to do what?
One thing was interesting to me on the whole process is that before we undertook the Pretty Marsh project, I was getting, a lot of inquiries from people over in that section of the town saying what can be done about internet. So it was something, it was almost daily that I was getting. These 44 seem to have gone silent. It's been years since I've had any inquiry about adding internet service. So I'm wondering if that is because these 44 aren't really existing areas or existing structures or houses or businesses that are interested in that, because it's been a long time since I've had any inquiry at all about adding coverage.
Plus, a number of people have gone to Starlink.
Some of those may have been covered by that, possibly. What you're saying.
But in terms of future-proofing the town, the current owner may not see a need, but they want to sell at some point, or their heirs inherit it, and at some point, somebody who owns that structure might like to have it. So I'm not sure how much of the preference of the current occupants or the driver versus is it good for the town to have these 44 locations. I agree. A stable. I'm not sure horses do a whole lot of internet surfing. That may not be there might be some mistake in the database, but if it's a home, why not? So I agree with the point that I think that Pete was making. Just find out who the 44 locations are and go knock on doors or make phone calls, send a letter, something like that.
If I may, I've scrolled to the page on Brian's report. I can share this with you if you like, so we can see what it is we're talking about. If there's
Yeah, that'd be
value.
helpful.
So can you see this?
Yep.
All right, so this is the map of the town, and trying to expand it here. Come on. So the blue lines are all cabled and the green lines are uncabled. So we can see that there's this one part of this road up here in the top left corner, then along Long Pond and Echo Lake, some of that, a little bit around this, which is Sergeant Drive and might not have any homes at that point anyway.
Mm-hmm.
This part's all Park Loop Road. That's Acadia National Park, that one on the right.
On this one here.
Well, this one, the one goes up to Jordan Pond House. You can see that that's all part of the Loop Road.
That's,
Mm.
yeah.
So that's all federal property there. We wouldn't want to even deal with that, I wouldn't think.
Can you enlarge that, Kathy?
Sure. Let's let me try and scroll up. It's going very slowly here to do this, but let me pull this. How's that?
Okay. So the other one by Echo Lake, that looks like Woods Road. Subdevelopment. And then you have those long driveways going down a long pond off of the Beach,
Gotcha.
Off
Beach
of-
Hill Road. And then is that Indian Point?
I think this
Yeah.
is Indian Point Road over here.
Would that happen to be where Mount Desert stops, or?
Probably the orange line is the town line.
Oh, right there, yeah. Huh, you would have thought, I would have thought the cable went all the way down Indian Point Road.
There are a few houses along Indian Point Road going up, crossing the Bar Harbor area. Oh, I guess it's Oak Hill Road that connects across that there.
Up
But
in here.
So I'm not obviously, I'm in driving my car, so I'm obviously not able to look at the map, but I do know that going down Indian Point Road, you know, going towards Gray Farm, a lot of that road has been done. The areas off of Gray Farm, I think there's a bunch of properties out there that don't have internet, and I don't know whether I'm chiming in on the completely wrong location because I can't see the map on my phone. So
I do know somebody who lives on Gray Farm who got internet as part of the last build out.
Yeah, it looks like it goes down Great Farm Road and into what's the other part of that road name? Anyway, yeah, on the map it shows it going down there.
Now, one of the, am I still not muted? Okay. One of the following pages here had a close-up. These were the properties that we were talking about. So on the left is Long Pond, here's Echo Lake. So here are those areas that were unserviced. So Lakeside Road.
All you see, it's interesting. There's 8 homes right on Long Pond and 10 homes right on Echo Lake. You got to imagine that those are amps, right?
Not necessarily. I think like right along here, this might be John Collier, Sue Ferrante that live along here. There are a bunch of people.
Kathy, you're spot on. There are several on the Echo Lake that are year round. So they're not just summer camps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, Long Pond might be a different, those could be more seasonal. I'd have to take a look at those properties along there and figure that out. But this is the kind of research I'm thinking, you know, maybe we should do and find out exactly who's missing before we spend any money on this.
if the 325,000 estimate that came from Spectrum,
Yes.
so if you start weeding out some of these, like we don't want to go to Jordan Pond House because that's the one that's in a national park, and so that was a sizable distance, it sounded like, and there might be others like that where you say we don't take it off the table. That would reduce the 325 to a smaller number, correct?
I would think so.
So it might be good to see some of these. I mean, if I owned a rental on one of the lakes, I may not want to have a internet, but I might be able to command a higher rental fee if I could offer internet to my customers. That's a business decision. And I know sometimes people have rentals while they're working and then retire, and they want to turn that into their own residence. So I think having internet available would be a good idea for the town, as for just to have people coming here who can enjoy their lifestyle here on MDI.
Have we cross-referenced any of our survey results with these roads?
I have not.
That might be interesting to do just by road, just a spot check to see if we got any responses. Because I agree with John. I think there's benefit, but I'm also curious, to Derlin's point, why there hasn't been any noise made about these underserved areas. So there might be a mixed bag. It might be people who aren't here, people who don't really think to call the town, or people who don't necessarily need internet now. In which case, if we think that there's a solution that's coming in a couple years, maybe there's no rush, and so we can take our time to find the right solution, and we don't have to speed to an interim patch of the problem. You know, it's kind of like a Band-Aid, right? Paying Spectrum to do this is kind of like a Band-Aid. It solves one problem, but it ignores some of the larger goals.
Yeah, I guess I may say a little better. I recall the same arguments came up when the cell tower debates were taking place. I recall Owen Craighead pointing out that he owns Mount Desert campgrounds. Said, I'm a hotel business where my customers, bring their own bedding, and it's not my business to tell them what they should or shouldn't want. They want internet. I can tell them they shouldn't want that, but that's what they want. And so I can see people, even if it's a rental, would want that. I just think that some of these that are kind of long, like I guess the other one that stuck out to me was the Indian Point Road, where there may not be a lot of houses, but there are some there. But and it's going along into Bar Harbor, and I got to believe there's fiber running there, and it's a natural conduit. And I'm surprised why they'd have a lengthy green, whatever the color is, run there with nothing on it. There may not be enough houses, but I don't think it's going to be a big cost for them to do that. If they're charging a lot of money for that, and we only see a couple homes being served, you might say, well, geez, I don't sure I agree with economics. So I think understanding how, where are the people, the 44 homes they think aren't being served, and where are they, and does that line up, and just track down what's the story? Are
Well,
they all
perhaps-
horse stables?
Perhaps we should ask Ryan Lippold of Casco Bay to provide us the exact addresses for those 44 homes that are missing.
Exactly. Yep. Hey, Lily, you there?
I am, yes.
Could you talk to Sue and just ask her what people down her way are using?
Absolutely, 100%. I'll do that tomorrow.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks. I'm going into the no cell phone zone, so I will drop off for a bit and I'll reconnect in when I get back home. So I'll be
Okay.
off for, I don't know, are you guys going to be on for another 15 minutes or are you wrapping up soon?
Probably 15 minutes.
All right. Well, I may then not make it back on, but I will check with Sue, and if there's anything else that you want me to help and follow up with, just have Kathy email me. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Yes. So here's our agenda to see how much time what else do we have to cover? So
Elaine, do you have any update for us from your end?
if you're
Oh.
talking, Elaine, you're muted. So, okay.
Yeah, I was trying to find the mute button. We had a meeting last night and our survey from Casco Bay had been delayed. It was supposed to be here before the holidays. It's been delayed until next week.
Oh, okay.
So we don't really have any updates whatsoever. We were wondering where funding sources were. We were trying to lay some of that out. Another partner could be what is that island, the thing that Michelle Marks works for?
Island Institute.
The Island Institute has a project that is focusing on our island here. And they would love, or are open to anything that we want to try to apply for. I've asked Michelle to give us some more details about what their offerings are. So they're there too as another funding source. But I think they want us all to work together too.
Wendell is not on today, and he was going to contact the Southwest Harbor town manager. I have reached out to 2 selectmen, but haven't heard back yet from them on level of interest, but I let them know why we were contacting them and what we hope to achieve.
So next steps, I guess one step is to get a list of addresses from Brian.
Yes.
And then and what we can do is, once we get that list, we can decide how we want to tackle that in terms of follow-up.
And we should just do a spot check on if there are any addresses that aren't in his list that people did respond to our thing and say, no, I don't have service. Just to validate, I'm just looking now at our stuff. There's really only a very few number of people who said they didn't have service. So for instance, there's a few on Bartlett's Landing Road. That might be what Lily was talking about. And so we just want to make sure, like, if his report says Bartlett's Landing is covered and we're getting on the ground feedback saying that it's not, we want to make sure that there's 100% agreement in those two data sets.
Yeah, I'm off the Bartlett's Land Road and I have it, but that's just me.
Well, probably not just you.
Right.
So we'll have to see. What you were looking at, Pete, was that was from a response to our survey?
Yeah, that was our survey results. Yep. That's also in the Dropbox, the spreadsheet. And there's there's really not many. One Lane Road, there's a few on Pretty Marsh Road. There's a few on Bartlett's Landing Road, like the firms said they don't have it. Otter Creek Drive. I mean, there's My Way, which is probably just a private road. Yeah, there's a few on Bartlett's Landing.
Okay.
Interesting. Sound Drive, Beach Hill Road. So yeah, I would assume that these people took the time to respond. We should at least validate that their addresses are correct in the Casco Bay report.
Another thing to consider is, I think about the area by Echo Lake. I'm sure is under some sort of neighborhood association, which we also would need to get. Just another process is that they would, I mean, even though it wouldn't cost them any money, there still needs to be probably a formal vote within the association for that, just as something else to check off. Other next steps? So Lily's going to contact Sue Collier and just find out what the sentiment down there is and what they're using. Just to see if another way of testing the accuracy of that.
Then we can ask Brian for the specific addresses.
Yeah, Kathy's going to get that from Brian. And like you said, Pete, to cross check them, kind of see if we can, are they in the areas in green or not, or are those some areas we're missing?
Right, exactly.
Anything else?
Well, Pete, while you have that address, while you have that survey results there, could you collate who it is that says they don't have service so we can check that against those?
Absolutely. There's 17 people who said no internet service. So I can get you all those addresses.
That would be great.
Any other business? Do we want to, do we want Brian on our next meeting?
I would think so.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, we'll get those addresses. Pete's going to send out the addresses he sees from the survey. We'll do some cross-checking on that. And go from there, I guess. So. Kathy, do you have anything else?
No.
Okay. I think we're gonna let Kathy go supper in private.
I've gone through my glass of water and all the Tic Tacs I had available. I'm stuck here.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I guess we're ready to get dinner ready.
Okay, thank you.
Very
Stop
much.
recording.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Right, bye.